Hey, what's up, guys? Just a quick little update here. Very simple. We're going into Wednesday, which is the 27th. Obviously, getting very close now to day off, which is Thursday, and then a half day or a little bit less on Friday. So pretty much Thursday, Friday. Really no trades. Things kind of going as planned. I definitely said that I would or expected us to sell off during Thanksgiving or this short week here, kind of as a front run. I don't know if it's going to be the last dip buy, but probably one of the last, in my opinion, if not the last, where institutions are going to be accumulating on that pullback. We're really seeing sensitivity via charm, right? So a lot of decay on a lot of these options going into these shorter holiday months. So we're going to see a lot of things become expedited, right? And it's very important to kind of look for the signs. I talked about it, and really what I want to focus on is I don't know how to name it. It's kind of like the Trump basket, if you will. I talked a lot about like MSTR. I've obviously talked about Coin. I talked about CLSK, which I took a lotto on. Mara is obviously a big fan favorite, even though it trades pretty poorly. And then obviously Tesla, right? So kind of crypto, Tesla, oil's a big one as well, but that has not seen a straight bid like I would have liked. But all of these names are things that we should kind of keep an eye on, and it's no different kind of going into Thanksgiving, coming into the Vana Charm flow and just overall flows that we'll start to see beginning in December. That should carry us into Christmas and then obviously the new year. But Tesla kind of shaping up how I like, right? Where we have essentially this topping formation here on the weekly. And we're still, ideally we pull back at the very least to this gap on the daily, which I'll show you in a second. But picture perfect world, right? We start to sell down from this weekly bar here. Although it is very low volume, this is to be expected. But I would love to see a pullback down into this 300 level, right? Just the retest of this weekly breakout, which really never correctly got retested. That's the picture perfect buy, in my opinion. Although I don't know if we'll necessarily get that. So at the very least, I want to jump to the daily here, and I've talked about this. Where we're now seeing this really tight consolidation, right? I mean, we had multiple days of consolidation essentially against this old breakout zone, like right around here, I would say. Maybe like right there, right? Where we had this little breakout. We ended up pulling back, and if you want to call it a retest, whatever, right? We ended up essentially pulling back down to these highs on this these daily highs up here. And we've gotten very, very tight, right? And a lot of people, I think, got caught on this breakout here. They likely got caught on a little bit of a break over that high from 1122. All in all, right, the biggest thing I think here is we're having a cool down of not only IV but premiums, right, are kind of decaying from theta as well, right? This is a very time sensitive period, as I've talked about from Charm, right? So we're going to see a lot of these start to deteriorate, specifically the 1220 going into like I would say 117 expirations. There's a reason I've been taking either March or June. These have the least amount of sensitivity to time relative to the dollar amount or the delta that they're moving. So very important to kind of just wait, right? There's a reason I've been waiting, guys. There's a reason I've been doing this. And like I said, at the very least, I would like to see just one final pullback kind of into this little gap here. If I just extend this out a couple days, right, you guys should be able to see just a pullback into like 330 to like 325, right? Just general area I think is going to really decrease the options premium very nicely. Also give you a nice little pullback to, most importantly, in my opinion, give you a solid risk foundation, right, which would be the bottom of that gap. So really looking for this either tomorrow or maybe the half day on Friday. Maybe we get like a nice little sell off there. But all in all, this is a top focus for like a new swing to add on. And this is going to be a big one, right? I definitely think that this could get that push up to like the 390s and 415s for the all-time high. I said I would be using more than likely the 420 call, which would be a little bit higher than the all-time high, but I think that would be a really good contract to scoop up once it's properly discounted. Now, kind of moving forward, I want to jump into some of the crypto names. MSTR is obviously a big one, but Coin is also up there. CLSK, also another name that I want to quickly take a look at. And then I still have one short on the list, guys. It's going to be AMD, so we'll touch on that. All right, MSTR, obviously a look here. I did post that this is more than likely going to be a day trade, right? I usually don't trade this name a ton unless it sets up on either a Friday or we have an extreme pullback that is a very lucrative opportunity to not only grab longer dated calls but also grab shares, right? And I don't think that opportunity in particular is really setting up till about 200. It might be worth it down here at this 298 to this like 268 gap, but there is a short-term bounce that's setting up. And it really might just play out either tomorrow or on the half day on Friday. Not too sure when, but we're coming into a very intriguing area where we have sold off essentially into this zone here at 340.65. If you guys saw before, I kind of posted that I thought it would be here at 383. But just zooming out a little bit and kind of going to the weekly and doing a little bit more due diligence on this, you guys can see that this was the 11:11 weekly candle close. It was also the 11:18 weekly candle bottom, and we're simply pulling back into that spot. And then if we jump into the daily, I don't use these all too often, but you guys do know that I do like to look at it from time to time. We do have the 9 and the 21, with the 21 resting right there, right around 336.79. So it ties in nicely just from a weekly and daily confluence from an EMA perspective as well as a price perspective for a short-term bounce, right? We obviously saw a nice wick be put in towards the end of day there. And then on top of that, if we just remove this really quick, you guys can see in the after hours, we did get a little bit of a push, right? It's this kind of like bear flag look, if you will. So very interesting look here, kind of going into tomorrow. But the real thing that I want to look at is if this can gap up, right? If this ends up giving us a gap up, I would actually prefer to see it pull back and then fill the gap. And then I would look to take calls off of that gap, right? And then to see if we can try to put in a short-term reversal. Now, we don't really know where that reversal will head to. My best guess is a lower high on this chart. If I can get it right, Jesus. Right there, there we go. I would say this is going to end up being a lower high somewhere just shy of 450, but I do think it could have some legs to either 450 itself or that 449 level I have marked here, or a move into this zone here, right around 403. So I would probably be looking at like 450 calls, 430 calls, somewhere in that range. Depending how it's priced, I might even need to step all the way out to the 450 calls. Like I said, these are very, very pricey, so it'll kind of come down to how they're priced if we end up getting this set up. But overall, I like the move. Like I said, I would like to see a gap up, obviously considering it already bounced off the EMA and that 340 spot. And then if it can gap up, look for a pullback, it to hold that gap, and then continue to give us that short-term reversal. And I think this could be a pretty good payout. So this is definitely going to be on watch. I think I'm just going to avoid the short side here, but this is definitely a watch for just this week. It's a day trade, and it's important to contextualize that. Okay, next is Coin. I think it's important to obviously look at one of the leaders here, and this is for sure a leader. It's not performing as well as Tesla, where Tesla's having stronger closes towards the highs. As you can see here on the weekly, we've pretty much closed in two dojis. We are kind of staying high, right? We've obviously filled the gap at 273 as well, but it's not as strong where we're closing near the highs of these weekly candles. But it's important to kind of keep this on watch because we are in this general area here of these weekly highs way back here that we are essentially retesting, and we did that on this gap fill. But we are holding really nicely, right? We pretty much touched the gap. We bounced where we needed to off these weekly zones. We're just consolidating, right? And if we jump into the daily, you guys, it'll make a little bit more sense as to my levels. Pretty simple progression gap system that I always trade, right? Where we have our gap high, our gap fill, or our gap low, and we essentially sold down into this gap. We technically filled the daily gap. We got a bounce. We swept over the highs. And typically with these sweeps, you would expect a new low to be made, which we didn't get, right? We kind of pulled back down, and we've been holding against the progression gap high. Now, it's really important to see a footprint candle here, right? I'm not going to just take this blindly. I would like to see us get a push up, some kind of pullback, a nice hold here, either a 15 or a 1 hour kind of hammer, or just a high volume print that we're going to be looking for, that hey, this is the bottom, this is the new floor, and you can kind of consider this to be our, our gap fill, our second consecutive higher low, and then I would expect us to start making our way up towards 340, 350. I could even see 360 for a new high to be made since we are technically trading at all-time highs. But this chart could have some legs to go even further than that, right? So I might be looking for like December 20th, 400 calls. Those should pay out pretty nicely. I don't think that's too extreme of a move either. This name can get some legs going, especially with an all-time high breakout like this. So I am going to be watching for 1220, 400 calls. This also aligns really nicely with what I brought up today. If you guys saw, I think I posted it on here. I'll go ahead and slide it on the screen as well. On whatchamacallit, TradyTix, you guys, let me see if I had it. It's right here. IBIT got a huge order. It was about 30 orders for IBIT, which is a trust fund or a trust ETF for technically just crypto, right? So 10.70 million, 30 orders coming in, and just below that, kind of the same thing, we saw BitX coming as well, which is a levered bull ETF as well, getting a nice little order here at 5 orders, sorry, at 1.95. So both of them just essentially targeting highs for a breakout. If you look at Bitcoin as well, it is kind of looking like it's flagging. So just a very interesting thing here, and I think it would be really nice to kind of trade the analog that we've consistently seen with this this high tight flag or this high tight setup on the weekly time frame, the progression gap system on the daily, and looking for it to trade back up to the highs and get that all-time high breakout. We might be able to time this, and it's very important to time this with the Bitcoin move as well. So that's a very interesting setup. If you guys saw as well, I'll just kind of tie this together. CLSK, kind of the same look, right? And Mara got the same exact look as well. Mara had more of confirmation, but kind of the same thing, right? Where we had this kind of breakdown to fill the gap. We pushed out. I would have expected us to hold here above this 1483 level. Fortunately, it dug down a little bit deeper and kind of broke under. Whereas Coin, right, the leader, is obviously now holding the spot. And I think this would more follow suit with Mara. Mara kind of did the same exact thing, guys, where Mara had this right here, right? Right there. Gap there, technically. Zoom out just a tad. There we go. We'll get rid of this. Kind of the same thing, right? Broke out, pulled back, kind of broke out again, and it pulled back, and I would say it actually pulled back not into the wick, but it pulled to the actual open, so the gap. And this was the day here, and then it pushed out and made a new high, and it's still kind of pulling back. We could get a higher low here on Mara. This chart looks pretty good. Like I said, it's just hard to trade, and every time I trade this name, honestly, I feel like I get destroyed. I don't like this name at all. So that's kind of the analog that I'm using, is kind of Mara's setup. CLSK had a similar setup where I took lottos, but I really think that Coin could be the one that ends up kind of giving us that move, right? So I do want to keep this on watch. Just really important how and the candle formation plus the volume of the 296 retest or reclaim and getting that footprint, establishing that as our higher low, as our floor of this range, and then kind of having a big spring up for a move up to this 340, and then potentially a bigger breakout to like 360, 370, etc., etc. All right, last but not least is that short side trade that I am kind of watching, and it's not counterintuitive. I think a lot of people are kind of misconstrued of the concept of dispersion. We've talked about this, right? We can see in a particular sector lagging names that can catch a bid once the froth is taken out of the leaders, right? That will now be reallocated towards the laggers. The laggers will then take their lead, right? And then the names that had led will start to be distributed and reaccumulated at lower levels, and then they will mark up as well eventually, right? And I still think that NVIDIA and AMD have potential to see that froth come off since they were the leaders. MU, Intel, although Intel did not have the best day today, I still think that those names can catch a bid, right? I still am bullish on SMH or just semis as a whole. It's a very critical level, and I don't think there's any denying that. But usually, when people start looking at them and start saying that these names are going to tank and that the time has come, that's when I'm kind of peaked to start looking at the longs. And I still have my bull thesis, but AMD, I do think that this is a very, very crucial level here. Talked about this a lot with this trend line that's been forming for a long time now, right? Since 10/13/2022, right? We just had this macro higher low trend line with the August 5th lows, right? I've talked about this in all my scans. We're coming down to a really key spot where if we do snap once again when we've pretty much held under 139. I'll show you guys the relevance of that. If you guys didn't see on the daily, it was a nice little bounce that we had that ended up giving us a lower high. This could be, if you guys want to call it this, just a 2-bar weekly bear flag, and then this could confirm on a breakdown, and it really confirms on not only a break underneath trend here, but also a break under 132. If we start to break under 132, I talked about this so many times, I think this comes down to 121, and it could break down a little bit lower to 115, right? So very important to be watching this, and I'll kind of zoom in here on the daily as well, just to give you guys some context, right? This was that level that we bounced from. Remember, we caught a bounce, we pushed up, we could have gotten into the bear gap here, or we could have had a reclaim, some kind of change of character once again with a higher low, a new high formed into the gap, and then it could have started to trend out. Unfortunately, this ended up being a lower high. We broke down underneath this spot, and now we had a lot of retests and consolidation against this spot without a real breakout. We broke out, and then we have this nasty bar here, this engulfing bearish candle, or bearish engulfing. I said that backwards, but really just closed underneath, and I think this gave any bulls that had life, kind of took it away from them, right? If we can just gap down a little bit lower and we start to break underneath these daily lows here, I'm very, very intrigued, right? Remember, this is a two-prong type short. It needs to not only break underneath 132, but break this trend line, and I think we can get a very swift move down to this spot here, guys, down to that 121 level, and I still think that the 1220 120 puts will absolutely pay, and I think it's worth keeping a couple runners as well to hold for a move underneath this that could sweep out this little higher low at 121 and then potentially reclaim, right? I'm not saying that I'll be completely bearish on this once it breaks that, but it might break under, come here, push back up, reclaim, and then reaccumulate. Excuse me, I keep hiccuping. Reaccumulate here, and then obviously maybe can trend back up towards this 158 gap. I don't know, that's a little bit too far into the future, but I do like just the short on this name here. I think this name's been relatively weak, especially since this technical gap fill up here at 174. So definitely want to keep this one on watch. And like I said, it's not counterintuitive. I still think MU, Intel still have a lot of potential. This name is obviously just one of the weaker names here that I think is being distributed alongside NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA itself doesn't look good either. NVIDIA, I don't know, it's make or break, guys, for like I would say NVIDIA. But obviously, looks like a potential UTAD here. This has potential to sell not only under that level, but my levels are a little bit messed up, just kind of doing this on the fly. We had this old high here, or technical lower high, but you guys can see we've kind of broken above this, multiple pivots of it as support, as resistance, but now we're kind of stuck on this with an inside bar off of this massive bearish candle. It is lower volume, so like I said, we could see a bounce. That's why I'm not personally playing NVIDIA. I have to see how AMD forms out, but this could absolutely fade underneath 136 and have a move back to this little pocket here of daily highs, right around there. This is clearly where we bounced last time. We almost bounced again here on 1031, but this could move down to 131, and then who knows, guys? I mean, this could even fall all the way down here. What is that, like 120, 115? Yeah, 120 to 117. Could get nasty for NVIDIA, but like I said, this has been a black hole for a lot of options flow, a lot of equity flow. Just everything has been kind of sucked into this name for so long. Those could definitely be translated and taken into other names that have been lagging, especially from a fundamental standpoint, technical standpoint, right? Just kind of putting that money into laggers and having them catch up is definitely on the table, and that's why I still kind of hold my viewpoint on MU, on Intel. TSM could be a good candidate as well. But yeah, just want to see how this ends up shaping out with AMD specifically. I might keep my eyes on NVIDIA. We'll see how it ends up looking tomorrow. Because like I said, it is a low volume week. It's kind of hard to tell right away what's going to happen. So it's important to see how these open up in pre-market, how they trade for the remainder of the week, and that's why I've been really patient. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I mean, MU, caught a nice little bid end of day today. I don't know why I have this trend line here, but basically, once again, caught the gap here, which is really important. We had a pop out of that gap. We pushed to this 105 spot. We obviously rejected it, and we pulled back. But you got to think, right? This could be our low of this range. this area here could be the reclaim of the range. When I say range, right, I'm talking about this 98, 94, right? This was that gap where we ended up kind of bouncing midway through the gap. We created this little giant range here, right? Hopefully you guys can see that. I don't want to have to make a big thing, but right around there, right? This is the range I'm talking about. And we caught a bottom, we pushed up, rejected. We could get a higher low here, and this could give us that pop up into this 108 spot. Pull back, it could base there, push out, base, right? And you guys can kind of see where we could get the potential trend, right? And then kind of move us back out into this 115 spot. And that's really what I'm looking at for MU. This is probably, like I said, going to be the biggest trade for me in a long time. TSM was the other one, if you guys remember that. This is definitely the biggest trade. Intel, not the best look today, I will say. Although, once again, low volume, so it really just kind of comes down to how this week finishes, guys. And I want to give it to that first week of December as well. I don't know why it's not zooming in, but we did catch somewhat of a bid towards end of day. Really, you could look at this as just one kind of like giant consolidation, right? Kind of or a flag, whatever you guys want to call it. But we're consolidating pretty nicely just against this like 24.59 spot. We've had closes above, we've had slight breakdowns, but nothing too dramatic. Obviously, we did fill that gap. I think we were just a little bit shy. A little bit shy of it right there. You guys can see it 23.32. So I'm kind of giving it some leanway to 23.32. That's why I really haven't touched on it too much. But this chart has a ton of potential. It has so much potential, right? And I think it's just important to kind of let this thing play out. Yeah, I mean, if we take a look at SMH as a whole, just so you guys are all kind of on the same page as me, big spot here where we could potentially break down, right? If we kind of take a look at this, like on the daily, it really just needs to hold like right around, I would say like here, right? It's a big spot at 240.28. But if you look at the weekly, man, like this is just absolutely massive spot here. It needs to hold this. It's consolidating. It's had multiple weeks of like potential breakdowns, but it's held, right? And it really has been holding a pretty nice trend. And if this can break out, guys, this will be explosive. This will move all the way to 262, and then I could see it moving to 279, 280. Is obviously getting those all-time highs. So really crucial spot for semis, and I want that exposure, and that's why I've been taking MU, Intel, and that's really it. I guess I'll touch on Roku while we're here, right? Roku, not the best look today. I think if there's going to be something that I cut, it will be this one. Name is just, I don't know what's going on with it. It's just not catching the bid that I would like. Obviously, we have those higher lows that have been forming. If we take a look, I'm just going to chart this from like scratch, right? I mean, this was the progression gap that I would have liked us to hold. We had a nice candle here in terms of buyers stepping in and closing us back above. But you know, just with today's action, this did not look very good, right? I mean, I would have loved to have seen us hold 68, which is that blue line, right? That's that progression gap, and at the very least, hold that at 65.97. It's not happening, right? This thing is just not giving us what we want so far. So this could be the one that ends up taking the stop loss. We'll just have to see how the remainder of this week goes, but just got to be prepared for it, right? And I still think the other two have a great chance of success. Risk to reward on this one was great. You know, 90, what is it, like a 68 to 67 dollar entry wherever we were at, all the way up to 91. That would have been an extreme move. That would have been really nice. Even with a small amount of contracts, would have been a big payout. But if this thing fails, it's all right. I just got to be okay with that. So I am going to be keeping this on watch for the remainder of the week for that stop out. So very important to just kind of keep things tame, not go tilt. Just kind of keep your eyes on this one. But that's it. That's pretty much the updates. If you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot me one. I know it's another slow week. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Remember, this is a lot more than just charts. This is about timing things and timing things proactively around big money and seeing where they're kind of centering their positions. And we kind of see where they're doing in terms of kind of like that Trump basket, but also the accumulation and potential risk to reward being extremely favorable in some of these semi names, and I still want to keep my eyes on them and you know, obviously take my shot at them. So that's going to be it, guys. I will see you guys tomorrow. No guarantee if I take anything. I did say I'm probably going to start to add into MU or Intel, maybe even Roku if it looks good. Plan is to also look at Tesla, look at Coin, look at MSTR, kind of have that exposure, at least my eyes on that that Trump basket. But that's really it. I'm not putting any pressure on myself to take trades to appease people. Hopefully you guys are cool with that. I mean, just what it is, right? I know a lot of you guys caught GME. That's awesome. Good for you guys. I closed my shares definitely a little bit earlier than I would have liked, but it is what it is, right? We all got our different things and different risk tolerances and things like that. But that's really it. Ideally, we kind of have either a flat day tomorrow or maybe a little bit more of a pullback on some of these names, and then flows come back, guys. I'm telling you, flows come back. We're going to start to see that front run rally, in my opinion. So very, very important beginning of the month of December coming here very shortly. So I hope everyone enjoys time with their family. If you take this week off, totally cool. There's no pressure to trade. There should never be pressure to trade. But yeah, the time is now. We're getting pretty close to start kind of taking things super serious and sizing up pretty big. So that'll be all. Catch you guys later.